Hi everyone, welcome to Rendering Teardown section. My name is Simon. Today we're going to have a look at this nighttime rendering of a exterior space. So, as usual, we're going to start with composition. Composition here is pretty straightforward and I quite like it. It's a simple plaza surrounded by different blocks of buildings and simple frontal view, with this main building here, and nothing really special about it, but I think there's like, you couldn't really do it differently. Like, it really works well in terms of composition. In terms of lighting, I think it's a little bit problematic because it seems like we have many light source. So obviously our light is coming from, well, at least the right side. And the thing is, we have cast shadows basically everywhere. So this is something that could make sense if we had, say, a light post at somewhere that sort of cast light and shadows so that we understand what's happening. But the thing is, here none of the light sources are visible, which makes it hard to actually understand what's going on. So I would try to simplify the scene, because here, basically this one is not really appealing. Like, you don't really understand what is happening here. So it's not something you want to happen. The main thing, I think, and that's the problem, is that basically the composition here makes that the main building per se is this one, and that the main space to actually describe and put into play is this one. And as you can see, in terms of detail and storytelling and basically stuff happening, this is extremely empty. So even though, like, the idea would be about doing something extremely quiet with just like actually maybe nobody and anything, the thing is, your composition makes that the image is about this space. So you have to actually detail it properly. What I mean by that is that you have your little grass here, so you would have to use it here as well, because here you have like this really like not fancy transition between the vertical wall and the ground. So you would have to use some sort of grass here or whatever you want. Basically, there's like a huge question about landscaping here, so you need to bring something to make it interesting, because otherwise this space is definitely not a selling point in your image. The other thing is that you could actually work as well on the sort of paving system here. As we can see quite easily, this is the same texture that is tiled all over the ground. But if this is one of the main feature in your, like, basically the ground in public spaces is one of the main thing, and is usually what is treated with the more accuracy, is that you're gonna have to actually model these things and have like a proper texture. It would be quite interesting, for example, to have a reflection. Say, I could actually do it really quickly just for funsies, like that. Just so that you get the idea of what could be done. Say you have like a little bit more interesting ground. This is way too much. But that sort of tiny changes, of course. So you would have this sort of slight changes. Basically any, like, you have to work on the reflectivity, on the bump mapping, on the variation of the tile and stuff like that. And the thing is, maybe it's also about, maybe you have it, maybe not like that, but maybe you have a tree here that sort of becomes the center of attention of your thing. Maybe it's lit from under so that you have like a nice artificial lighting here. Maybe you have way more different variety of vegetation here. Maybe your sitting system is backlit or something like that. I mean, there are millions of things to do to make a public space more appealing. And it's mostly, if you have stuff like that, it's mostly about vegetation. So you have to think about it. And the thing is, and that's what becomes interesting with that, is that once you really work on your foreground and the whole thing that is happening in this area, this actually becomes, even though it still stays the main architectural aspect of your image, it becomes sort of the backdrop for what's happening here. So maybe you could have just a couple of people talking in the background and have like a really nice, quiet foreground with vegetation and nice landscaping, and etc. So that's the idea. I would definitely spend much more time on the public space here. Another thing related to like I think I'm not sure about the mapping of the texture here. It seems like the wood is going from, like the texture is going from one plank to another, which is not gonna happen in real life. So you have to be careful to completely randomize your planks. Maybe it's just my eyes, but just if it's the case, just be careful that it's actually not happening. In terms of just in terms of rendering, be careful with all the fireflies you have here and there, because it's definitely not good. It's just a matter of basically render settings and light source. So just be careful of how you set them. Another thing that is quite interesting, and I think is maybe lacking a little bit here, maybe you could have like some sort of light coming from behind this building here, so that it sort of creates a nice alley, because here everything looks extremely dark and it's not really inviting. So depending on what you were trying to achieve, you have to think about it. But basically this sort of area, for example, is really nice because you have like a nice contrast with the rest of the image, and it sort of leads your eyes to this area. So that's something I would keep. I also quite like the differences in treatments you've had with the different windows here. So that's a good point and a good starting point. The thing is, it might look still like you might want to add a bit of detail inside, maybe like a light or something. Maybe here someone's watching TV, maybe blah blah blah, I don't know, but it's just, it lacks a little bit of life in the image. So adding people, I would actually, like, considering the overall mood, I would really go with a really nice detail foreground with minimal lighting, like a nice tree or something that catches the light from here, so that you have like a nice rim effect on your tree here, so that you sort of recenter the attention of your composition here, and then have stuff happening in the windows. That would be extremely simple and efficient. And maybe add just a secondary light here that comes from here and goes that way, and maybe there's a shadow or something, but like maybe someone coming from that space, so that you have interesting dynamic. I think that'll be it. I'll take time to, like, a couple of minutes to try to tweak it so that you sort of see what I was trying to do and trying to convey, and we'll see how it goes. And I'll come back to you on the different layers that I've created. Let's do that. So here we are. It's just like a 3-4 minutes, so of course you won't be expecting anything really beautiful at that point. Either way, here's the sort of result. So as I was saying, maybe it would be interesting, of course it really depends on the design, but having some sort of a centerpiece to focus on is quite interesting. And either way, what is important is to have like a proper detailed public space. So something like that. And maybe there was also a little bit of burn and dodge. So as you can see, it can really create different atmosphere. Here with the dodge tool, we managed to recreate something happening here, which is quite interesting, and to refocus the main light here. There's also like this secondary light in the foreground that is quite interesting because it sort of gives a nice detail on the foreground. And then the burn tool was used to sort of create variety in some of the textures. There was like some fuck ups here, but it's, well, just be careful with it, but it's okay. It doesn't strike the eye too much. I think it's okay. Like the sky is quite saturated, but it actually looks pretty good, so I wouldn't touch much about it. And also enhanced a little bit the ground floor. It's obviously too reflective, and the reflection would have to be a little bit like, you would have to have tiny difference in reflection amount depending on like the each paving here. So it's just like the idea, maybe you would have something different, but the idea is that with a slight reflection you could sort of enhance the artificial lighting that we'd have here, and it would be really interesting because, as you can see, if we compare it with the first version, it really sort of makes the ground much more appealing. So I'll stop right here with this image. I hope you've learned interesting stuff in the process, and that you sort of have a better understanding of how actually your composition really tells what part of the image should be perfectly dealt with and detailed, because basically your foreground, whatever you're doing, your foreground will always have to be like perfectly detailed and have interesting stuff to enhance the storytelling. Same goes, like I didn't add any cutout in the image, but you would have like, it wouldn't be a problem if you had a couple of people here and there. I wouldn't cram the image with many people, of course, because it wouldn't make sense, but maybe just a couple of people at the entrance here would fit quite well. Anyway, thank you, and I'll see you in the next teardown. Bye guys.
Tonight,